Take this opportunity to silence your telephones and find a seat. City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for February 11, 2019. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Zachary Urban.
Present.
Janice Hoppy.
Present.
Christy Davis.
Here.
Larry Matthews.
Here.
Leah Dozeman.
Here.
David Keeter.
Present.
And George excused himself for this evening. He's out of town. And Tim has resigned.
Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have one new counselor, and I'd like to go to our attorney, Mr. Dahl, for a little questioning.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is make a little record that will establish that new council member Keeter is able to participate in the approval of the minutes and also in items numbers 2 and 5 under public hearings. And so I've got just a few questions to ask him to make a little record so that we've established that for not only the minutes but those other 2 items as well. Councilmember Keeter, is it true that you were not a council member, or at least appointed yet, as of the January 14 council meeting, nor the 2 council meetings during which the hearings were held on items numbers 2 and 5, the ordinance approving sale of property and the ordinance approving a zone change on Tabor Street? Is that correct?
I believe those were all at the January 14th, but that is correct. I was not a council member.
Were you present in the room for that meeting?
I was for the
entire meeting. Thank you. And have you had the opportunity to, since that time, also review the packet materials and the recordings of that meeting?
I have.
Do you believe that you are capable of making an informed decision not only on the minutes of January 14, but on those 2 council bills?
I do.
Mr. Mayor, with that record, I'm very confident that Councilmember Keeter can and should, in fact, participate in all 3 of those matters, and I appreciate your making that a part of the record.
Thank you very much. With that, councilors, you have the council minutes of January 14th, 2019. If there are no corrections, we will let the minutes stay as presented. And we will let them stay as presented with our thanks to the clerk. We have tonight what usually is an unusual circumstance, but they seem to be happening more frequently, and you know, in our city, that we have a vacancy that has been created in the city treasurer's position by the election of our city treasurer, Mr. DiTullio, to the county treasurer. The city did advertise the position, and we received two applications for the position of treasurer, and Mr. Christopher Miller and Mr. Corey Stites. Those gentlemen came to our last study session and presented to the council and asked questions, and I would like to thank both of them. I think they're both very qualified candidates. They both made great presentations, and I really appreciate their willingness to step forward and join the civic process that we have going now. So the time has come to seek a motion and an election, and I will turn to Ms. Hoppy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to appoint Christopher Miller as city treasurer, term to expire November 25th, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Ms. Hoppy.
I'd just like to say that as I wasn't here for the study session, but as I was watching the tape, I really appreciate both Christopher and Corey coming and applying for this position, and they both did a really amazing job presenting their cases, and it was a tough decision, but I appreciate both of you stepping up to be a part of our elected leaders.
Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion to that to insert the name of Corey Stites in the place of Christopher Miller.
And refresh me, Mr. Dahl, is a substitute motion now require just a second, and then we move to the substitute motion?
I didn't bring my Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm trying to recall the last time we had a substitute motion. I think that that's correct, because if it doesn't have a second, it really only has one supporter. So I'd recommend you have a second if there is a second.
Okay. Is there a second to the substitute motion?
Second?
We have a second and a motion and a second on a substitute motion to substitute the name of Corey Stites. Is there discussion on the substitute motion? Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as much as these are two candidates being brought forward for our consideration, it's difficult to not compare the two together, so I don't want to necessarily go down that road, but I do want to remark on Mr. Stites' commitment to the community, his experience in working with our community, and especially his ability to navigate, moderate, and deal with opposing sides, and being able to have solid judgment in our ability to look at his past experience and see that solid judgment is why I would like to see him be our city treasurer.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion effectively is to elect Mr. Corey Stites as the city treasurer. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Who was the second on that? I was. Okay. All right. Motion fails 2-4 with motion fails 2-4 with council members Dozeman, Davis, Hoppy, and Keeter voting no.
Thank you. The substitute motion fails. We are back to the original motion to elect Mr. Christopher Miller. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
Just a minute, let me get this.
Ms. Davis.
I just want to comment because I do think also both candidates very qualified. I think that in a situation where, you know, and the good news is we do have a council position open as well, but I think that when you look at the experience for a treasurer, there is that difference. So again, both candidates qualified in very different reasons and both very good candidates.
Who seconded the main motion?
Mr. Keeter.
Mr. Keeter.
Okay.
Ms. Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to kind of echo some of the things that have already been said on the dais. I know Corey Stites very well. My son and I take martial arts at his school here at Personal Achievement Martial Arts. I had the privilege of working for him for a little while after I re-entered the workforce. After being a stay-at-home mom for several years, him and his wife run a phenomenal business in the Wheat Ridge community, and they contribute a whole lot, not only to the Wheat Ridge area, but also to the surrounding schools through their programming. And I will 100% support Corey Stites if he decides to run on the ballot here come November. I also have had the privilege of working with Chris Miller on the Carnation Festival board. He serves as treasurer on the Carnation Festival board, and so I've worked with him in that capacity. And I definitely think that when we're looking at appointing a treasurer, we want to be looking at specific qualifications, specific knowledge and experience, especially when we have this short of a term. We need somebody that's going to be able to jump in and go with the flow as opposed to having to swim upstream. And so I just want to commend both of you for coming in and applying, and you guys both gave wonderful presentations, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews.
In lieu of the fact that we have had a de facto vote already, I'm urging the council to vote in the unanimous decision one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Keeter.
Thank you. As the person who has most recently gone through the same gauntlet. Want to stress that I appreciate what the effort that it takes to for both candidates to put themselves out, and similar to the other comments, it really came down to the financial experience and the resume, and I also hope that Mr. Stites does in fact put himself on the ballot come November.
Thank you, Mr. Keeter. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And like I said in the previous appointment for the council seat here, it is, we're very grateful to have two really amazing candidates and great experience. And in my mind, like I said before, with respect to the appointment of the council member, I really wish the voters had this opportunity, but this does fall to us as a burden to make this appointment, but only for 10 months. And I would urge our citizens out there to run for this position and to run for all the open seats that we have available come November. But because this does fall to us and we are tasked with this, I do appreciate the experience and the wherewithal within both candidates to do a good job. And given Mr. Miller's breadth of experience in accounting, I would just ask that we also encourage him to be accountable to the voters as well and be transparent, and I expect that to be the case. And so I will be voting in favor of Mr. Miller for this appointment, and in the same spirit as Mr. Matthews, to be unanimous, because this is a short-term appointment. But I would encourage both Mr. Stites and other individuals that may be interested in this position to run in November for this, so the voters have the opportunity to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, once again, the motion is to appoint Christopher Miller to the position of city treasurer. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6 to 0.
Thank you. Well, congratulations, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Stites, for being here. I'd like to ask Mr. Miller and Mr. Randall to meet me at the podium. Do it right here. This is, yeah, this should be pretty good.
Ready? Mr. Miller, please raise your right hand, sir, and then repeat after me. I, Christopher Miller.
I, Christopher Miller.
Do solemnly and sincerely declare.
Do so solemnly and sincerely declare.
And affirm.
And affirm.
That I will support the Constitution and laws.
That I will support the Constitution and laws.
Of the United States.
Of the United States.
The state of Colorado.
State of Colorado.
And the charter and ordinances of the city.
And the charter and ordinances of the city.
And will faithfully perform.
And will faithfully perform.
The duties of city treasurer.
The duties of city treasurer.
Which I am about to assume.
Which I am about to assume.
Congratulations. He needs to sign these. Okay.
Mr. Miller,
Mr.
I need
Miller,
you to
come back up.
here for a minute.
And Janelle, he gets the decorative.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. All the paperwork that you sure understand.
There's two of them, Mr. Miller. This one's for you, the nicer one.
Okay.
And then this one's for the city.
Thank you.
One more. Okay. This is yours. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Go to work. We have a couple of proclamations tonight and some ceremonies. I have one about Random Acts of Kindness Week. And I know we have some folks that are going to help me with this. Robin Baker with Local Works, and whatever other good people we have to join us. all in here so the folks at home can see you. I never have this much support at the podium, I'll tell you this. This is very good. Well, I'm really pleased to make this proclamation. This is Random Acts of Kindness Week, February 11 through 17, 2019. Whereas the City of Wheat Ridge is committed to celebrating the role simple kindness places in encouraging authentic, caring connection in our schools, organizations, and communities. And whereas the City of Wheat Ridge recognizes the value of simple acts of kindness performed without prompting or reason, and how these acts can positively impact the performer, the recipient, and onlooker of the good deed. And whereas the many daily acts of kindness that occur in our community are largely inconspicuous and unobtrusive. And whereas by recognizing these acts of kindness, all members of our community will be made aware of the importance of being kind to others throughout the year. And whereas the purpose of Kindness Week is to remember the simple day-to-day acts of kindness that enable our community to be a kinder, safer, and more secure place to live, work, and play. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bud Starker, and the City Council of the City of Wheat Ridge formally designate February 11 through 17, 2019 as Kindness Week in the City of Wheat Ridge, and urge all citizens to participate in spreading kindness and practicing respect, generosity, patience, and consideration of others at all times. In witness whereof, on this 11th day of February 2019, Bud Starker, Mayor. So, here's the proclamation, and tell us what we got going on here.
To go ahead and take the mic off of here.
Absolutely. You know, I have to watch you so it gets back, but go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Robin Baker, and I am with Local Works, and we are thrilled to be partnering with the City of Wheat Ridge Police Department and Compass Elementary on Random Acts of Kindness Week. Random Acts of Kindness Week was born out of a partnership with Compass Elementary on Spread the Love Day. This will be our second year partnering on Spread the Love Day, and they will tell you a lot more about that. This week, we're encouraging residents of Wheat Ridge to perform random acts of kindness and then tell us about them on our Facebook page, which you can find on the Local Works Facebook. I won't read the link to you now. We also have these Kind is Cool buttons for the council members, and there are more available in the back. And with that, I will hand it over to Amy with Compass Elementary.
My name is Amy Flagg. I'm a teacher at Compass Montessori. This is my 4th year coordinating our Spread the Love event. It's a community service event we do every year with our 9 to 12-year-old students. And it's every Valentine's Day. We all go out and do community service around the Denver metro area. So I actually recorded a few statistics for you guys. So this year we have 150 students, 13 staff members, 30 family members are all volunteering at 16 different organizations and locations around the Denver metro area. In all, this Valentine's Day we'll do over 800 hours of service to our community. So it's a really big event. It's a fabulous opportunity for the kids, and so they actually wanted to share with you some of the things they've done in the past and will do this year.
Hi. My name is Camila.
And my name's Anna Jane.
And we're from Compass Montessori Wheat Ridge.
And we are doing a little speech about kindness and how you can spread the love.
Kindness is a quality of being friendly, generous, and considerate.
Treating people with respect and compassion.
Being gentle, caring, and helpful. It is a feeling of deep admiration for someone or something.
You can spread the love this month by opening the door or shoveling and many more. Shoveling snow.
We hope you can spread the love this month. Thank you.
Hi, my name is is Julia Stamps. I'm in 6th grade at the Compass Montessori Elementary School. So first of all, what does kindness really mean? It means to have a feeling of affection for someone, or to respect them, or to be sympathetic towards them. So when you hear the word kindness, what do you really think of? Most people hear the word kindness and usually think about a kind deed they did for someone, or that someone did for them. When someone is kind to another person, they both develop a good, happy feeling. From this happy feeling, it makes everyone want to be kind to each other, and it's kind of like the ripple effect. When you drop a stone into a pond, then it's going to make waves to go off, and that will go on and on and on. And kindness is really strong. For example, when someone's being rude to you, you can be kind to them, and it'll be really hard for them to keep being mean to you. Last year, on Valentine's Day, we went for Spread the Love, and we helped the police department do yard work for people who could not do it themselves. And it made me feel happy, and it made a lot of other people feel happy. And I think that if we strive to be kind, then we can be happy and make others happy too. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya Haynes, and I'm a student at Compass Montessori School, and I'm in 6th grade. Last year on Valentine's Day, I participated in Spread the Love. I went to do yard work with a few other students with the Wheat Ridge Police Department. Other students went to retirement homes, food banks, cat shelters, and participated in other projects for people who needed help. I like doing Spread the Love because it makes me feel good to help other people, and I know it makes other people feel good to be helped. Being kind is very important because if no one was kind, life would not be enjoyable and no one would feel like they were wanted. Being kind to one person can change their life, and that's why it's also important to show empathy to someone who's going through a hard time or who just needs a friend. Thank you. Hi, my name is Ella Haynes, and I'm from Compass Montessori School, and I'm in 6th grade. Spread the Love is something that the upper elementary does in my school to go help our community on Valentine's Day. Some of us go to retirement homes, the Cat Care Society, Food Bank of the Rockies, volunteering at children's museums, and much more. Last year, I went and hung out at the retirement home, and this year I am going to the Cat Care Society. It is important to be kind because it makes others feel good, and it makes you feel good too. Sometimes even the littlest bit of kindness can change someone forever. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emma Shaw, and I've been at Compass Montessori for about 9 years now. And every year we do something special for Valentine's Day, like writing letters to our friends, doing crafts, or even doing Spread the Love. Spread the Love is a way for the upper elders at Compass Montessori to help our community. Last year, I volunteered at the Golden Retriever Rescue of the Rockies, and we cleaned the dogs' cages and made toys for them. This year, I'm going to the Cat Care Society with my good friend. Spread the Love is important to everyone because it is our way of giving back to the community. It is also important for us kids to help our community, so when we get older, we can still help our community all through the year, not just Valentine's Day. Thank you.
I can say something. So I'm Cade. I am not currently at Compass. I'm at Creighton, but I went to Compass for 9 years, and it was great. I loved it, and I loved Spread the Love too. I went to the retirement home, or not the retirement. I went to help do yard work for people who couldn't, and I had a ton of fun with hanging out with friends, but I still did yard work, helped the community, and I think it's important to have fun while you're helping people, and that's just really important.
I want to thank all of you for coming. You did a great job, and I really am looking for a lot of love to be spread in our city. So thank you so much. Thank you very much. That was great. You can see where the future heroes are coming from. That's great. We've got more love in our city that I want to invite Rachel Holteen up to talk about.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Starker, and everyone who's here tonight. My name is Rachel Holteen, and I'm just going to do a little practical thing here first. If Chief John Simpson or Chief Dom Lombardi are here tonight, if you could please come up. Thank you. So I am here to, those guys are going to be doing their work ahead of them. Our work is behind us. This year, the Wheaties Academy, which is a local leadership program that is geared towards taking ideas into action from the ground up, we partnered with different organizations and schools across the city to ensure that this year on Valentine's Day, every single first responder in our city receives a note of gratitude from our community. So over the last week, we have partnered with, oh, I'm sorry, is someone from Lutheran here? I was supposed to ask about, thank you. I didn't have a specific name. Thank you. And what's your name? April, thank you. And Chief Brennan. Chief Brennan, get it, come on. He's slinking in the corner back there. You hardly notice him when he's in the room. Great. Thank you, guys. So over the course of the last week, Wheaties Academy graduates, we've got two standing here, Kathleen Martell and Sunny Garcia. We also have a graduate up on the dais, Leah Dozman. We partnered with the following schools, Stober, Peak Academy, Prospect Valley, Mountain Phoenix, Wheat Ridge Learning Academy, which is the little guys. We also partnered with Boy Scout Troop 613, and then we harassed lovingly the patrons of Colorado Plus, Lucky's Market, Bardo's, and then we also harassed the rest of Wheat Ridge city staff to ensure that we have 440 notes of gratitude to go to each of our first responder agencies. So my lovely assistants, these guys worked a lot at the stuff with us. It's hard to chase down that many thank you notes, but as soon as we'd say to people, do you have a minute to write a note of gratitude to a first responder, people who were like halfway out the door or really trying to avoid eye contact would turn around immediately and write 3 or 4 of them. So anyway, in each of these boxes are enough notes for all of the first responders. So thank you guys so much for what you do for our community. It's such a great way for us to thank you for the things you do 364 days a year. And our community had a really great time doing it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the love tonight. So, not an original line. Our next order of business is citizen right to speak. And when I call your name, if you would come to the podium, and I will try to give the on-deck speaker also. Adjust the microphone so it's comfortable and we hear you. And then give us your first name and last name, if you'd spell your last name, and then your address. And I want to say a couple of words about the green, yellow, and red lights that you'll see in the podium speaking. You have 3 minutes to speak, and the green light will appear when the speaker commences speaking. We will start the timing after you've given your name and address and are ready to go. The green light will flash when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining of your time. The yellow light will appear when you have 15 seconds remaining. And so please conclude your comments on the yellow line, on the yellow light, and then when the red light comes on, you need to stop, just like not going through a traffic signal. So thank you all very much. And so our first speaker is John Butler and Barbara St. John on deck.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and audience. And my name is John Butler, B-U-T-L-E-R. My address is 11576 West 38th Place, Wheat Ridge, where I've resided for the past 5 years already. I just want to come again, and I've got a couple pieces that I'm going to hand to the clerk for your distribution. The first one is a list of the number of children who have died due to marijuana. I know in the popular press you hear that nobody's died from marijuana, but that's not true. This organization is Parents Opposed to Pot. They've assembled the stats here, and I believe it tells where they have found them. And Colorado leads the day with 13 child deaths in the last 6 years. So it's 2 a year, but it's still somebody's child that's dying. The second article that I have here is from the YouTube, an interview with Dr. Brad Robert. He's an ER physician in Pueblo, Colorado. And so my wife transcribed it. I'll just hit a few of the points here, and then you can read your copy at your leisure. So he's asked, do you see a perception in Pueblo that now that we have something that's legal and regulated by the state, that kids have a perception that it's not harmful? And the physician answers, yes. People tell me all the time it's not harmful. That's almost a daily conversation. So the last shift that I worked, I see it almost every day. And by kid, I'm going to range kids from 15 to 25. That's probably the most common age range that I see, says the physician. They'll use it 5 or 6 times a day, and they'll say, I feel fine. They'll also tell me in the same breath, when we talk about whether it's addictive, they'll say, I'm not addicted to it. I just don't feel good unless I smoke. They tell you it's safer than cigarettes, safer than alcohol, and that's what they hear in the advertisements. But we know that cigarettes are hard on you, hard on your lungs, lung cancer. We know that alcohol is hard on your liver over time. And surprisingly, though, that marijuana is hard on your brain. So these are 3 things that are pretty hard to live without: your brain, your liver, and your lungs. So you can damage yourself in many ways. We do have excellent evidence that it is damaging to the brain. Colorado leads the charge here in legalization. He says he'd like to see it become a Class 2 drug so that it can be tested like every other drug, and you'd get it at the pharmacy, not at a shop. Thank you for your time. I'm going to wear you out on this subject. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara St. John and Kelly Bailey, I believe, on deck.
Barbara St. John, S-T period J-O-H-N, 3480 Everett Street. Is that all, I think? The topic is heroin safe injection sites. Since many nowadays do not get the local papers, they may have missed this vote in November by the Denver City Council. They voted 12-1 to start a heroin injection site or safe injection site in Denver to be the first in the country. If passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, it would enable any city in the state to do this. 2 reporters from 710 KNUS radio station, Peter Boyles and Stephen Tubbs, and Mark Crowley, a former policeman, went to Vancouver and drove the streets last month to see what this would look like if it came to Denver. Canada allows this, and it started in Vancouver in 2003. Now, Vancouver has 6 sites, and they were appalled what they saw there. What started as good intentions to stem the overdose drug deaths was a place where heroin or other drug addicts could get free, clean needles and shoot themselves under safe supervision. What ensued was a 4x8 block surrounding area of alleys and streets with drug users lying down, sitting on the pavement, shooting themselves and others up, even in the jugular vein, filth, trash, and selling shoes and stolen tools and electronics to get money to buy more dope. Cartel bosses were walking around. The many addicts looked like the Walking Dead. Police and ambulances were all over, and ironically, the vast majority of users did not patronize the injection site. What a terrible look at abject humanity. I don't want Wheat Ridge to allow this to come here if it should pass the legislature and the governor. The overdose problem is best addressed by rehab facilities for those who want to be off drugs, not facilitating more addiction. This would be a blight for Wheat Ridge. We want to maintain healthy neighborhoods, no unsafe injection sites. All of you, please take the time to watch the KNUS Peter Boyles website. Click on the No Safe Side site presentation that they gave recently to legislators at the Capitol at lunchtime. Their report and photos will convince you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kelly Bailey and Jeffrey Scheiter on deck.
My name is Kelly Bailey. Can I go? Mm-hmm. B-A-I-L-L-I-E. My address is 4825 Wadsworth Boulevard. And I'm here to talk about 4440 Tabor Street rezoning. I missed the opportunity in January 14th, but I will not hold.
Ms. Bailey, that,
yes.
That is part of the council agenda, so we save that until actually that item comes up in the agenda.
Correct, but it has been closed, so I signed up for the open portion of items that are not on the agenda since it was closed to public comment. So I'm discussing the zoning. I was here on the 14th. I tried to speak, but I was not allowed to speak.
Let me turn to my counselor and see if where we are in the proper territory.
Well, the hearing record is closed, and so any statements made during citizens' right to speak won't be a part of the hearing record, can't be relied upon by the council in making its decision because you opened a hearing and you closed the matter for further action. So that's sort of point one, that even if there are statements made, they can't be made a part of the hearing record because of the decision council made when it closed the hearing. We have a tradition of not typically censoring citizens when they come to citizens' right to speak. So I would suggest that you adhere to that. In the past, we urge people to confine their remarks to a subject which is not on the agenda. But when you start censoring people, you're never done. And so we rely really upon their cooperation in doing that, and not in telling people what they can say or can't say. So my advice would be that the person can speak, but needs to be aware that I'm going to advise the council that the statements can't be made a part of the hearing record or relied upon by the council in making its ultimate decision on that case.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Matthews?
Even though the hearing is closed, they're allowed to speak on each agenda item, and it doesn't, and I'm not believing that the codes or our rules say that just because a hearing was closed, someone cannot come up and speak on an agenda item at a future meeting. So if it fits the world in general, I would suggest that her comments would have more meaning if she spoke when the rest of the people that want to speak on this item, and there may be more, we should be calling for anyone that wants to speak on an agenda item that should be allowed to speak at that time.
Well, certainly, but in this particular case, that hearing has been closed, and so additional testimony won't be taken on that matter unless we republish and reopen a new hearing.
Understood it would not be in a hearing, but it would just be an agenda item. If she has an opinion and something to say about the agenda item, I don't see where that would not be allowed.
Well, I don't know if anyone is signed up on that agenda item, but what we have here is someone that wants to convey information during citizens' right to speak, and I'm saying we don't censor people during citizens' right to speak. I think that's the right rule, but that the hearing testimony is closed. I can't sit here and say that you didn't close the hearing because you did, and there's an effect to that has to have some meaning when you close a hearing.
I would suggest that the lady say her piece now under citizens' right to speak, and we can debate this item at a future time.
If there are no objections from the council, Ms. Bailey, I will allow you to speak, and if you're able to not speak on item number 5, that would be great. So I will leave,
Then I'm going to
up
just
you.
talk about zoning.
Okay, that's great.
So I was in attendance on January. Sorry.
And before you start, I just want to make sure our clerk has got her.
B-A-I-L-L-I-E.
No, the button's in order.
Oh.
Good.
Sorry.
Okay. Please continue. Sorry.
Okay. So as often the case with lots of social media posts, my attendance at the January 14th meeting felt like a live version of a post. If I were to take only the minutes from January 14th, it would feel like the world was against the rezoning opportunities that were potentially going to take place in District 4, possibly AKA 440 Tabor Street. However, it was about 20% that created the dynamic of the dialogue. There's 80% of the people that own property, live in the vicinity of this particular parcel, that do care and are excited. Whether you're a business owner or adjacent landowner, there is support for such a development. And in addition, because my husband and myself have attended not only the initial meeting back in May of 2018, the planning department meeting in November of 2018, as well as the January 14th meeting, we participated in all 3 and saw the developer not only take into account feedback from the May 18th meeting, but put it into practice in their design. I was literally the only person in attendance in November that showed up to the planning meeting that had any care in the world about this development, which I think is a big deal. This developer has shown and has a track record in Wheat Ridge to develop nice things, and it is a corridor to the base camp and the only Wheat Ridge commuter rail station. It is important for us to plan for that and look at that. I support the months of hard work that the planning department put into such a development plan, and I think that the rezoning change should be considered as a benefit to District 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeffrey Scheider, and
in lieu of time and importance, I have a prepared letter. May I share that with you guys before I start?
You may, yes. And our next speaker is Marguerite Parker.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Scheiter, S-C-H-I-T-T-E-R. My address is 7595 West 48th Avenue in Wheat Ridge. In lieu of time, I'm going to go ahead and read a prepared letter. I have been a citizen of Wheat Ridge for almost 4 years. I live just off 48th and Wadsworth, where my property will be significantly altered during the Wadsworth expansion project. I believe that when all is said and done, my property will be around 70% of its current size, and one of the 2 houses that currently reside on my property will be destroyed. I've attended every meeting since 2016 regarding the Wadsworth expansion project when I first became aware of the project. Up until last summer, I was satisfied with the process and everything seemed to be on the up and up. Until that point, the different meetings plans were relatively consistent, at least for the region north of 44th Avenue. Until a meeting last June, the current access at 48th Avenue had remained in place, and there were plans to install the infrastructure necessary to add a stoplight once it was justifiable. Last June, things changed drastically when the planning team decided to do away with the 48th Avenue's access from the east side altogether, while significantly impacting people's access to Wadsworth and I-70 on both sides of Wadsworth, north of 44th Avenue. While I personally am against this change, as it negatively affects my property value and quality of life, I am not here because of that. I think the radical change is bad for everyone's property value north of 44th Avenue within a mile of Wadsworth, while the current entire plan is bad for the city of Wheat Ridge as a whole. Even with all of the problems with the plan, that is not my biggest issue with it. My biggest issue is the communication, or better yet, lack of communication between the project team and the public. This communication has been so bad from the city's side that I truly believe the city planners are trying to keep these plans a secret until it's too late, which we were just informed a couple weeks ago by the project manager that they were too late to change, even though no one really knows about them, including perhaps some of you. Unless people were at the meetings, which were only advertised to less than 5% of the people impacted, they don't know. You see, this plan was introduced in a conspicuous way to start at a meeting that was advertised on a vague postcard delivered to a very limited number of households. I would not have attended the meeting if I wasn't directly impacted, but I did, as I am. After that meeting, I began to get the idea that this plan was going to get pushed through without most anyone even knowing about it. So I decided to gather signatures to instigate a community meeting in which I could do outreach, as the city clearly doesn't seem like it had any interest in doing so. I'm going to skip ahead. If you determine that this project is worth delaying or modifying, there are solutions that exist that don't hurt our chances at federal grants. I'd be happy to share some ideas if given the chance. It's worth mentioning that delaying the project is not within my personal best interest, as I'm all for it. Being that I have a property that is going to be severely impacted, I would rather have the project start as soon as possible. I'll be here after the meeting if you want to further discuss. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marguerite Parker and Rachel Holteen on deck.
Marguerite Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R, 7391 West 48th Circle. So I would like to continue where Jeff left off because I believe in all the words that he said. So Jeff was even one to inform one of the city council representatives in the district of the plans, as she didn't even know. He also notified various representatives within the city over 6 times since July that their website was not updated with the current plan, and it still isn't, even though we were promised in the January 30th meeting that it would be. If a citizen of Wheat Ridge wants to know what the current plan is for the Wadsworth expansion project, they need to ask one of the few people who attended the meeting to inform you, as it is nowhere to be found. How could a city do a major project on a critical artery that greatly affects the citizens and not make the people aware? The way this project has been handled is a travesty. It's the best kept secret in Wheat Ridge, and I'm here to tell you that if you're hearing me, you want to research it, because I think everyone's property value north of 44th Avenue is going to drop between 5 and 10%, and their quality of life will be negatively affected. I also think the city of Wheat Ridge is doing itself a disservice by taking a potentially golden pathway to the city and devaluing it so that citizens of Arvada can get to work in Lakewood faster. This project in its current plan does not benefit the citizens of Wheat Ridge and actually hurts them while benefiting the neighboring communities. The City Council exists to defend and protect the citizens from its government. This project right here is the perfect scenario in which the council should intervene to investigate, and if it sees fit, halt the project in order to get it right. This is a long-term project that will affect the city of Wheat Ridge forever, and it needs to be done right away with the proper oversight. I encourage you to dig a little deeper into the matter and do what is right to serve your community. I only found out about this in the January 30th postcard that was given out. I had not heard about the June meeting, even though I live on 48th Circle, which is going to be turned into a dead end instead of being able to access Wadsworth and I-70. And I also, like I said earlier, noted that we were promised the website would be updated with the changes that are happening, and they still have not been. So most of the community doesn't know about this. And I'm here, and I'm gonna start informing every one of my neighbors as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Holteen and Marissa Silverberg on deck.
Good evening again. I'm still Rachel Holteen, 4690 Balsam Street. And I am one of 3 co-chairs for the Wheat Ridge Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy. I have Kathleen Martell here with me and Corey Stites. And together we are working with 26 steering committee members. We've been working together since August on the city's update to its NRS. And we're really excited because starting this week, there's going to be a community-wide survey, and we really hope to hear from as many people who have an interest in the future of Wheat Ridge as possible. The link will be easy to find on the city's website, hopefully, although after the last couple of speakers, we'll definitely check it. Patrick has flyers. The survey is technically going live on Wednesday and will be open through March 1st. And we really encourage everyone in this room to take it, but also send it to your neighbors and people you know in the community who really care a lot about the next 10 years in our city. Excuse me. The survey will close on March 1st, and then the week of March 18th, we're going to be hosting 4 open house sessions throughout the city on the 19th and 20th. So again, those will be on the city's website. They're going to be one at the Active Adult Center, one at the Rec Center, one at Colorado Plus, and then another one at Wheat Ridge High School. So we really hope everyone will come and attend that, and that includes you, Council. We hope to see you there. And at those open house, we're going to be reviewing what we learned from the survey, and then talking about what are the next steps as we hopefully move towards adopting the revised NRS in May or June. So if you have any questions, go to the city's website, and there's a link on the landing page that's pretty easy to find, or you can go to the city's website /NRS, and please share the survey with everyone you know. Thank you. And these guys are fantastic too. I've been talking a lot tonight, but yeah, we're working hard for you guys, but we really want to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marissa Silverberg and Ihor Figlis on deck.
Good evening. I'm Marissa Silverberg. It's 1 R, 2 S's, and Silverberg. I'm at 13095 West Cedar Drive. That's technically in Lakewood, but I'm here on behalf of Jeffco Public Health. I'm the community food mobilizer at Jeffco Public Health, and I just wanted to inform folks of an event we're having as part of the Healthy Wheat Ridge Heart Healthy Month. On Friday, February 22nd, we're going to have an event called Health from the Ground Up, Meet Your Local Farmers at St. James Episcopal Church. And we have a great lineup of Jeffco farms. For folks who aren't familiar with community-supported agriculture, the aim of this event is to encourage folks to learn more about it. The idea is to purchase a share of local produce at the beginning of the season to eat locally and have local access to produce, as well as to boost the local economy by buying from local farmers. So we have a few Wheat Ridge farmers attending, 10 farmers total from Jefferson County, great lineup of speakers, and a lot of local folks coming in attendance. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach me or visit our website for more information. If you go to Jeffco Public Health, there's a link on the front page. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ihor Figlis.
Good evening, Ihor Figlis, F-I-G-L-U-S. I live at 9775 West 36th Avenue. I just want to make a little comment about something I spoke about last time, which was about the rules and procedures for city council meetings. I want to relay to you a conversation I had with a neighbor who, after the January 14th meeting, said, basically, I really don't want to attend any more city council meetings. And I would ask you all to take that into consideration in developing your rules and procedures and the conduct of the city council meetings in such a way so that it's encouraging to the citizens rather than discouraging, and especially in consideration of topics which are important for particular neighborhoods where some people maybe have more time to speak and others are restricted. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all of the speakers that I have signed up tonight. Is there anyone here who would like to speak that is not signed up? Please come forward and give us your name and address and go from there.
My name is John Clark, CLARK, 4665 Swadley Street. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I think I have to now. So yeah, I'll talk about zoning throughout the city, but I guess if you want to talk about property on Tabor, we can. I found a quote from Miss Bailey, the previous speaker. This comes from the Planning Commission. This is the minutes. Commissioner Peterson asked about the possibility or the possible land acquisition of the property to the south and Mr. Lyons' intentions for it. Mr. Lyons said he would develop the same type of townhomes to keep it consistent. Kelly Bailey, 4825 Wadsworth. Miss Bailey said she and her husband own the property that is for sale to the southeast where the drive connection would be made. She indicated that they like Mr. Lyons' product. He has been successful in the past with the city of Wheat Ridge and would like to work with him and have their parcel developed jointly with the subject property. That subject property being 2 acres, 12.5 units per acre. They own a property at 11661 West 44th, which is 1.5 acres. If they develop it the same way, my calculations is 18 more units. So if you're looking at 26 units at 4440 Tabor, go ahead and just throw those other 18 right next door. The fact that 20%, the 20% number that was thrown around, I have a serious problem with that. There's a legal protest form, and you have to be within a certain amount of feet, and you have to touch the property. And I believe that the property owners, especially the one at 4430, that everybody seems to overlook, has a very good legal protest. He has a single-family home that everybody seems to just forget about. So when you're looking at the number of units, the amount of traffic, let's remember there's another acre and a half sitting right next door that they're all sitting there ready and waiting for this unit or this property to get rezoned, and then we're on to the next one. So I'm all for property rights, guys. Don't get me wrong. I bought my property. I don't expect anybody to tell me what I can do within the limits of the law and the zoning. If Mr. Lyons or Mr. Coons wants to develop the property for 4440 Tabor, he's more than welcome to. He can build 2 units legally now, and if he actually went to the neighbors, might actually get them to agree to 6 or 8. So let's just remember all that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight who would like to speak? Please come to the podium and give us your name, and you may go ahead. Well, we're on items not, we're at public comment on items not on the agenda. When those agenda items come up, we will have public comment on those. If you're signed up to speak. Is the sign-up paper out for agenda item number 2?
It says that it is closed. It's on the table. It says that
the parkland dedication.
On any item, when we have public comment, whether you're signed up on the sheet or not, when all of the sign-ups have done, I'm going to ask if anyone hasn't signed up that would like to speak on the item, because I think that's fair. So if you're going to speak on item number 2 or another item that is on the agenda, we will call for public speaking at that time.
To be clear, on both 2 and 5, council had previously closed the hearings. There are sheets in the back that are set up for items 2 and 5 and specifically advise that we won't be taking testimony on those 2 items because those hearings are closed. I get it that on the general sign-up sheet that can't prevent someone from deciding they really want to speak on 2 despite the fact the hearing's closed and they sign up for 2. But you have closed the hearing. We had that discussion earlier. And I think there's probably, there's advice at the back of the room saying, item number 2's hearing closed, won't be taking testimony. And that is because you closed the hearing. And it's my belief you should stick with that. Now, I get it that people have signed up in spite of that. So the real question is, what do you do with people's expectations? Probably you can do what you did with the one speaker on public comment to say, look, the hearing's closed, so since you signed up, we'll allow you to speak, but we can't make it a part of the hearing record. I realize that's awkward, but to do anything else means you never close a hearing when you close it, and that's got to mean something. So for tonight, I guess I'd say take people if they're signed up on those items. We're not to those items yet, but take them, but we'll continue to emphasize on the sign-up sheets what items are open for testimony and what items aren't, and that's fair that people know that.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. My question is, why do we have a sign-up sheet for public comment when that public comment is no longer authorized under the public hearing process?
There was a sign-up sheet for items number 2 and number 5 that had a note on them that these items, public hearing has been closed, so there will not be any public comment on these items, because we knew there would be people coming tonight with these items on the agenda, and they'd be confused if there wasn't a sign-up sheet. So we put a sign-up sheet with a note that said there's no public comment on these items this evening.
And there's a general sign-up sheet, which is the problem here, that we always have for anything else, because we don't have an individual sheet for all 10 items on a given agenda, and we'll let people look and pick what they want.
Are they just practicing their signature then? What's the purpose of signing up for something if you're not allowed to speak?
Well, I think the problem is arising as a result of what sheets are back there. There's a sheet that clearly says, item 2, not taking testimony. Item 5, not taking testimony. Then there's the general sheet that we have every meeting that people, pick the item on the agenda they want to sign up on. The problem is that they read the sheet that says, item 2, not taking testimony. Then there's kind of an open sheet, and they go ahead and sign up for item 2. Going forward, I think we probably have to figure out how to make it clear to people that there are some items that no matter what sheet you are able to put your name on, that the hearing has been closed on. And perhaps the way to solve that is we have sheets, the only sheets we have out there are sheets that are numbered with the particular item, with the items that are available for comment. And that'll mean a lot more sheets, but we can do that.
I guess that's my concern, is that why do we have a sheet available for item 2 and 5? Is it?
No, we don't. It's a sheet that's blank, and you write in which item you want to talk about. Because, for example, if we had an item 8 or 9 tonight, we wouldn't have a sheet for it. People can just go, oh, that's one I want to, and they sign up. Unfortunately, it sends a mixed message, I suppose.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to make sense of this. Obviously, you're here to talk under public comment. The public hearing on items number 2 and items number 5 has been held and has been not adjourned, closed. So I would invite you to the podium if there's something in public comment that you would like to say that is not specifically about an item on the agenda. Please come to the podium, give us your name and address, spell your last name.
Thank you. My name is Susanna Coates, C-O-A-T-E-S, 9835 West 35th Avenue. When two private businesses make a private business arrangement, that is their business. And there is no earthly reason for the city and its land to involve itself in these business arrangements. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight who is not signed up for the public citizen's right to speak on any item that is not on the agenda? Please come to the podium. Give us your first name and last name.
Hi, I'm Fran Singer, and I'm a little confused, but, tonight is, let's feel the love. And I don't want to change my script because I'm not so good at, thinking extemporaneously. So I live
Singer,
at
would you please give us your address?
9810 West, I looked at you and then I needed to finish my sentence, and then 9810 West 36th Avenue, Wheat Ridge. And because I get messed up in changing the script, you just have to bear with me. Tonight you are voting on a parcel of land that is part of our park. Many of the people in this room worked hard to acquire this land. We did so with the vision that our park would be part of a green belt that extended from Crown Hill to Clear Creek. We thought it would be the jewel in the crown for Wheat Ridge and distinguish us from our neighbors. This goal still holds true. On January 14th, the Denver Post discussed the importance of open space. In fact, the headlines shouted, "We need more open spaces." I believe this article also applies directly to us. The article states that Denver's building mania is hurting its residents because of the lack of green space, creating, should I live here or should I move, scenarios. The article also raises quality of life concerns as people search for nature near where they live. The Post goes on to say that a growing body of scientific research points to a human health need for green space in our cities. The research from psychologists and urban planners has found that direct access to neighborhood green space, such as our park, is essential to making our cities livable and its citizens of all ages healthier and happier. The alternative reality, if you choose to commercialize this property, you will be impacting the health of our residents. You will create major traffic congestion at two intersections, the intersection at 38th and Johnson and the intersection at 38th and Kipling. You will impact safety. Please consider the numbers of children walking to and from our park and walking to and from our nearby schools. You will dramatically change the dynamics of our neighborhood forever. You will uglify our park and our city. In closing, I hope you will help us achieve the greater good to use this property as it was originally intended, park space for all citizens to enjoy. And remember, it's our jewel in the crown. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here tonight who is not signed up to speak but would like to speak on citizens' right to speak on any item not on the agenda?
My name is Odarka Figlus. I live at 10580 West 34th Avenue. And I would like to make a comment about agenda packets and how recommendations are presented to council. And as an example, I will use the recommendations for passage of the sale of the park property. The first recommendation mentions that the park is excess property, but this is a statement that is not substantiated There was no public process, there was no public involvement to determine whether there are unmet needs or uses for parkland. There was no analysis from the park department on potential uses or benefits of development as a park. Mentions that this piece of park is zone planned commercial development. Well, that's true, but it's pretty much irrelevant since all of Discovery Park is zoned planned commercial development. Number 3 recommendation says, if this sale does not happen, the land has no value as commercial property. Well, that really stretches credulity, and it's not so even if you read the appraisal, that's not the case. And speaking of the appraisal, there's no mention in the appraisal at all of the value of this land as parkland, which leads to the question of how impartial was this appraisal and how carefully did it really look at what really are the best uses for this land. It only looked at commercial use. It did not even mention parkland as a possible use. Number 4 recommendation says Apple Ridge wants to relocate. Well, I don't see how this is at all relevant. If we believe that we have a free market, then Apple Ridge is free to sell their land and move to another piece of property in the area. They can do their negotiation and move. That's really, how is this a reason to move? But as long as we're on that topic, if we're talking about free market, could it possibly be considered free market to subsidize mega giant CVS at the cost of an established business, namely Wheat Ridge Pharmacy, who's faithfully served Wheat Ridge, I think since Wheat Ridge was founded or pretty close to it. Number 5 recommendation says CVS will generate tax revenue. There's no numbers here to back this up. How much tax revenue will they generate, especially after they come to you for a subsidy in the form of a TIF, and which is tax increment financing? And when they get that,
Ms. Figlis?
Yeah.
Are you talking about how the agenda packets were prepared, or are you speaking about item number 2?
Well, I guess there overlap.
Okay, I think your time is about closed.
Okay, can I just finish up with one?
You may have a sentence or two to finish up,
Okay,
please.
I will make this short. So what I'm really trying to say is that I think that it would be good if these agenda packets would give you more analysis behind the recommendations, and that's really what the point that I'm trying to make.
Thank you so much.
And especially when you talk about loss of tax revenue through TIFs, and the 6th one was traffic patterns indicate that vehicular traffic will exit onto 38th from Johnson, which is 1,000. I'm sorry, just one more thing.
Thank you. No, ma'am. I think we're going to. No, ma'am. You're not signed up to speak, and so is there anyone else who wants to speak under public comment on an item that is not on the agenda? Thank you. We're going to move on to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a response to public comment.
You may respond to public comment.
I just wanted to respond to Jeff's comments regarding the 48th Avenue cul-de-sac and the commitment by staff to have the designs regarding that proposal be put on the city website. Following the meeting on January 30th that evening, I had sent an email to the city manager to that effect requesting that those documents be placed on the website. My hope was that would be done by the next business day at the close of business. And so I'm just curious as to that there's 100 different mentions of the word cul-de-sac on the city, but none of them are regarding this design. Why are those documents not on the city website, and what can we do to make sure that the citizens have a chance to peruse those particular designs?
They are on the website. I'm looking at them right now. They're under the Wadsworth Improvement Project page, under the draft project area design link, which is it's the design document for the whole stretch of Wadsworth, which includes that section at 48th Avenue. They've been up there for several weeks.
Well, in my mind, it's not very clear that that's in there, because I couldn't even find it by searching by cul-de-sac.
Well, it's not a cul-de-sac design. It's the draft design for the 44th or the Wadsworth project. We can put a note in there to make it clear that this includes the 48th Avenue, but it's the design documents for the whole Wadsworth corridor. We don't have a separate design for the 48th Avenue cul-de-sac. We can put a note on there that this includes 48th Avenue, if that would help, but the design documents are on there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to respond to some things that were talked about by Mr. Baker and another lady. Some weeks ago, I mentioned that we had sold our soul in the city of Wheat Ridge to open pot stores so we could get tax income. And I see there's some people that agree with that statement. I do wish to let everybody know, though, that, and it was just a coincidence that someone brought up today safe injection sites. Well, I just downloaded our latest tentative agenda items today, and on February 25th, we're going to have a special study session. And included under the agenda items for the special study session is safe injection sites. So people, I still haven't figured out how to get future agenda items published so everyone can see them, but I'd like to give you notice now that right now it's on the tentative agenda list for February 25th in a special study session to discuss safe injection sites. Thank you. 2 weeks.
Ms. Davis?
So I just have a clarification, Mr. Goff, because I know Mr. Urban and I both met with your team as far as requesting the information be updated on the website. So where is it on the website? Is it under the Wadsworth Corridor section, or?
Yeah, it's on the Wadsworth Improvement Project page of the city's website. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's a link to the draft project area design, and it's numerous pages. So you have to scroll down to the 48th Avenue section. And it's my understanding that's the current design. I asked when Mr. Urban asked to make sure that this was up. I checked with staff, and they can confirm that it was put up, and then including the PowerPoint presentation from that neighborhood meeting also is on there. It hasn't been up. It hasn't changed recently. The same design's been out there for quite some time. And I can show you, sir, if you want, if you're staying. Okay.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Urban.
Sorry. I would like to see specifically, because that is a distinct change, and the consensus made in council under the June 4th meeting was specifically to seek additional community feedback regarding that particular component of the design. I would like to see that called out or offered up in a more highlighted manner than it is, because at the present time it's the last page and design documents, and unless individuals are looking directly for it, they would not see it.
We can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Ms. Hoppe, did you have something on this?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask that we move item number 5. It has been requested to postpone by the project owner. And so I'd like to ask that we move that to the very beginning, since how that'll be a very quick after the consent agenda. So it will become number 2, or 1, no, 2, second item, yeah. So that we can just get that done and get that off of our agenda for anyone who was here for that. Then they'll understand, they won't have to sit here all night to know that that has been moved.
May I suggest you call it item number 1E, and then if
I'll figure out the numbering.
And then the numbers we won't have to keep stumbling over numbers going forward.
Fine. Ms. Davis?
So I just have a question about item number 2 as well. I mean, I hate to do this because I feel for everyone who keeps showing up, but that needs to be a vote of the whole council, right? And since Mr. Pond's not here, I guess that is something that we're going to have to postpone?
It has to be a vote of all 8 council members, and so you have to wait until you have 8 seated. And you're missing 2 this evening, so our recommended motion is to continue that to April 8th. That's the first meeting that we believe we may have 8 available.
Okay.
Okay. Then we will amend the agenda accordingly. We'll move now to the item number 1 on the agenda. This is the consent agenda. Ms. Hoppy, would you please introduce item number 1?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Consent agenda A, motion to award janitorial services to American Facility Services Group, Lakewood, Colorado, and approve payments not to exceed $99,586.22. B, motion to approve payments to Charles Abbott Associates, Inc. for ongoing building permit, plan review, and inspection services in the amount of $802,400. No, 802.
That's too much money.
800,000.
By quite a bit.
Why is my brain not working? 800,000.
Which one's
802,000.
$802,400. What happened there? As approved in the city's 2019 budget and authorizing all subsequent payments. C, resolution number 10-2019, amending the fiscal year 2019 budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation for the reappropriation and re-encumbrance of the 2008 fiscal year encumbrance funds in the amount of $9,789,009.05, and resolution 12-2019, granting an easement to Metro Wastewater Reclamation District for the purpose of providing a sewer line metering station in city-owned open space.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion on the 4 consent agenda items, are there any items on the consent agenda that any counselor would like to pull off for the purpose of discussion? Then we will pull that item off. Which item would you like to pull off? That is...
Excuse me, sorry, my mic wasn't on. I'd like to pull the janitorial service item.
1A?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Hoppy, would you please give us a motion to speak to consent agenda items number 1B, 1C, and 1D?
I move to approve the consent agenda items 1B, 1C, and 1D.
Second.
Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy, would you please give me a motion on consent agenda item number 1A?
I move to approve the consent agenda item A.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on agenda item number A. Do we have discussion on the motion? Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was regarding an additional bid that was not considered. That there's a asterisk next to it that indicates there was a math error, and I'm curious as to, was that a math error on the part of the bidder, or was there a math error on the part of the staff, or why is that considered a math error?
Our purchasing agent's here, and if she can, she'll come up to the table and address that. I believe it was a math error from the bidder, and we noted that as such.
Please come to the microphone.
Use your mic with you. Yeah, you can sit there.
Not used to these
And
formal
introduce yourself, please.
I'm Jennifer Nellis, the purchasing agent for the city. In those cases where there is a math error, we want to clarify with a bidder whether the unit price can be honored, or whether there's a addition error or multiplication error in what they've submitted. So when we read something, it isn't necessarily the result that it should be, and in this case that was determined that it was the bidder's error, and it was not favorable to them. Okay. or to us.
And the winning bid in this case, is that the same firm that we've retained previously?
Yes, it is.
And is there any, this is in the weeds here, but is there anything in the bid requesting felt-lined wheels for the cart that goes through City Hall?
Maybe that's an improvement to the cart.
I would suggest that just because I've been here for God knows how long, but it seems like that's something that happens every night. And I love the work that they do, and they're a great team, and that's just one small improvement I would like to see done.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. That may add character to our audio performances. Is there any discussion on consent agenda item number 1A? Seeing none, would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Ms. Dozman, would you please introduce item number 5?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 33-2018, an ordinance approving a zone change from Agricultural 1A1 to Planned Residential Development, PRD, with an outline development plan for property located at 4440 Tabor Street, case number WZ-18-15/Clear Creek Terrace.
Mr. Goff, do you have an update on this?
I do. I'm sorry. Is this the?
This is item number 5, the rezoning.
Oh yes, we do. I'm sorry. Yes, I distributed a letter that we received this afternoon from the applicant, Clear Creek Terrace. You all should have a copy of that at your seat. They are requesting a postponement of this hearing until there's a full council.
Thank you. Ms. Dozman, would you please provide a motion?
I motion to postpone agenda item number 5 until, are we having a full seated 8 council or?
Yeah, April 8th is
April 8th.
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone item number 5. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We will move to council item number 2. Mr. Matthews, would you introduce item number 2, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill, and let me blow this thing up again. Council Bill number 34, 2018, an ordinance approving the sale of designated parkland at the intersection of West 38th Avenue and Johnson Street, and in connection therewith, authorizing execution of an agreement for said sale.
Thank you. This is an ordinance. May I have an ordinance number?
This was already named Ordinance 1664.
Thank you. And I was not at this meeting, but I did watch this meeting online, and I understand that we have closed the public hearing. And so a motion is in order on this. Mr. Matthews, would you please provide us a motion on this?
I move to postpone second reading consideration of Council Bill number 34-2018, an ordinance approving the sale of designated parkland at the intersection of West 38th Avenue and Johnson Street to the council's regular meeting on April 8th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Dozman. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whether anybody is for or against motions like these and this concept of 8 votes in the definition of entire council, I believe that through no fault of the applicants themselves, we're short. We have a vacancy here. And I do believe that it's fair in all cases, in both these cases, that we postpone these votes until a full council is seated to give everybody a fair chance to be represented.
Ms. Davis.
I have a question for Mr. Goff. I know that I think it's one thing, to consider the parkland, and I think in here, it's been pretty clear of what's happening and the whole thought of TIF and those types of things. And I guess in some situations, are we putting the cart before the horse? Because I guess, for instance, if TIF isn't approved, I think the sale of the parkland is kind of a separate issue. And so how are we approaching that with like CVS or in that situation? Because you know, like, so let's, you know, if it was decided that, okay, we sell the parkland, but then, you know, we don't give TIF, is CVS, are they going to buy that contingent on the rest of the project? Is that how they're handling it, or?
Correct, yeah, there would be a lot of contingencies in this place, and I think you could go a couple different avenues in this case, but the biggest hurdle is selling the parkland. As you know, it takes 8 unanimous vote of city council, so that was what they chose to move with first.
So I think, just for clarification, because I've talked to Mr. Art about it and have my own thoughts, but really, when we do this, it's really about just the sale of the parkland, not that it's going to necessarily go.
Correctly, there's no
Yeah, 'cause
agreement. There's no agreement with anybody.
I mean-
to make that project even move forward to the next step would require the park to be sold to.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the transparency that it's there, that those are discussions, but there's a lot in those discussions that are still not set in stone. So I think that's, I think, a consideration, at least as we look at this.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We will move to agenda item number 3. Ms. Davis, would you please introduce item number 3?
Thank you. Resolution number 11-2019, a resolution approving an 89-lot subdivision replat for property zone mixed-use neighborhood and planned residential development at the northwest corner of Yarrow Street and 42nd Avenue, case number WS-18-07, Yarrow Gardens. And just an issue, the applicant is requesting approval of the 89 subdivision replat for property zone PRD mixed use. And it looks like there's just one section that they're asking for the replat, and the rest of it is what's already been approved. Is that correct?
We're going to find out in just a minute. This is a resolution. This is a public hearing. It is quasi-judicial. I want to open the public hearing. If you intend to speak on this, would you please rise and let me swear you in? I'm opening the public hearing. Do you promise to tell the truth as you understand it in this matter? Thank you. Please proceed.
Just because he's got those apartments across the street from it.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, while the screen gets started, I'm Lauren Michalak, planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. Before I present this case, I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and City Council does have jurisdiction to hear this case. Just a brief presentation from me tonight, and I want to start a little bit with a property history. This is a property that Council has seen several times with related applications. Property is shown in that small vicinity map. It's just west of Wadsworth, just south of 44th, outlined in that bright blue color. In 2017, a different entity owned this property, and they came through and rezoned a majority of the portion to mixed-use neighborhood. That's that royal blue color that's in the L shape. Subsequent to that rezoning, they purchased the southwest portion of the property and rezoned it to planned residential development in an effort to incorporate it into the overall townhome project. At the same time that the PRD was approved, we also approved site plans and a subdivision plat. That entity who owned it at the time specializes in early entitlements and particularly in environmental cleanup. What you can see from that aerial is that the site used to have greenhouses, and they needed to remediate the soil on that property. A partner on the project has been Thrive Home Builders, and they then purchased the property, and they're the applicant tonight. As the project proceeded into final design, it became apparent that some of the townhome lots needed to be modified slightly. So we don't typically look at site plans during a subdivision application, but this visual will help to illustrate the purpose of tonight's request. This is the approved site plan for the overall development, 89 townhomes and 1 existing single-family home. Access comes from Yarrow and from 42nd and serves a loop road and alley-loaded townhomes. Again, the focus of tonight is really only minor adjustments on the southern portion of the property. So that's what's zoomed in here. On the top of your screen is the original site plan with some of those units shaded in blue. And the important thing here is that you can see the units are distributed among buildings with 3 units, 5 units, and 6 units. Based on that final design of the townhomes, the reconfiguration is removing the triplexes and redistributing the same number of units into buildings with 4 and 5 units. The result is that because each of the townhome lot was platted separately, the shifting of those units requires that the lot lines also shift. So the blue illustrates essentially the shifting of those lines. Likewise, there are several tracks in this area, and several tracks are being modified as a part of this request. Those are highlighted here in yellow and orange. The tracks on the eastern and western ends, the changes are so minor in those widths that the difference is indiscernible in this view. The tract in the middle, you can see, has to shift as the sidewalk shifts to the west. The process for reviewing a replat is the same as the process for reviewing a new subdivision. So because the number of lots that are affected here, we process it as a major subdivision. It was the original plat that created lot lines, dedicated right-of-way, created easements. In this case, the only change are those few lot lines and tracks that are shifting. There's no change to other units. No change to the total unit count, no change to other easements or the overall design. We looked at civil drainage reports and traffic reports as a part of that original approval. We did send this on referral, and no referral agencies expressed any concerns. The Public Works Department has found the plat to be approvable. We did not receive any public comment in advance of this hearing tonight, which is a 2-week noticing period. Planning Commission did review the application and recommend approval on January 17th. And staff is recommending approval with one standard condition relative to the payment of fees in lieu of parkland dedication. That is the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before we go to questions from council, I want to open it up to public comment. And I have one speaker signed up, Roger Lesher. And Mr. Lesher, will you confirm for me that you were properly sworn in when I swore everyone else in? Or?
I was half bent over, and I couldn't move that fast.
That's all right. I had word that you had raised your right hand and sworn, so please continue.
I do. Roger Lasher, L-O-E-C-H-E-R. I live at 4599 Carr Street. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and others in attendance. I pretty much agree with the project that's going to be built. But what I have a problem with is the traffic problem that's going to be created. Most traffic will be going down Yarrow Street, and that's going to dead end to 44th. And they've already proposed a traffic light, turned it down, voted, said no, it doesn't work. They also said they would suggest putting in a right turn lane only, and with marking stripes. They also said they were, if that doesn't work, they also said they were going to acquire or take the property for an additional lane on 44th. Now, of course, this is going to take off half the parking spaces for all the commercial people on that street to wherever where it's going to dead end when they're going to widen Wadsworth. I also take great umbrage with Mark Wahlberg's statement, if they develop the Grawl property, we'll make them put in a street, meaning the extension of 42nd through more commercial property. More logical approach would have been if they would have exited to the west onto Ammon Street, where there's already a stoplight in place at 44th. And maybe there's another better plan out there, I don't know. But I don't think this is it's too late to correct this problem, and I think that it should be looked into a little bit farther for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all of the speakers that I had signed up to speak. Is there anyone here tonight who was not signed up to speak but would like to speak on this matter? You may come forward now. There are none, so I will opening questions to council. Mr. Matthews.
I have to ask, in the paperwork here, it says it became apparent that several of the previous plotted lot lines would need to be adjusted, which is one step down from obvious. What changed?
Sure. So the applicant may be able to elaborate, but essentially with the property changing ownership from the early entitlement company and the folks that cleaned up the property to the actual builder, their business model and the construction designs as they went to final design, the triplex was not a cost-efficient method of construction, so they redistributed the units among the 4 and 5 unit buildings.
Thank you.
Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to the point mentioned by the speaker, there was an indication of a potentiality regarding 42nd Avenue, either going east or west from here. And given this current subdivision plan, none of that is contemplated and is not being considered. Is that correct?
Correct. The issue of traffic came up at the Planning Commission hearing also, and it's my understanding that no signal was warranted at Yarrow and 44th, and after the traffic study was reviewed with the original subdivision application, no changes will be made to the local street network, but Public Works did make the commitment at the Planning Commission meeting to continue to monitor it, especially as these units come online, and other changes in the area related to the Wadsworth widening.
And so, just to be clear, the parcel of land between this development and Ammon Street, which would effectively be 42nd Avenue, I would be fervently against any extension of 42nd Avenue through Happiness Gardens, specifically because it is a connection between Wilmore Davis Elementary and Happiness Gardens. So I would just want to make sure that that's not contemplated and would encourage us to not.
That has not been contemplated.
And then as far as the traffic light at Yarrow and 44th, my understanding is under the previous approval of this subdivision, council provided a caveat that the developer pay for a traffic signal at that location. And what you indicated was based on a traffic study that is not met warrants. Is that correct?
Correct. That's my understanding.
And then as far as the warrants, is that based on the current traffic, or is that based on a projected level of traffic from the new development?
I believe it's based on the projected trip generation rates.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Davis.
So I've made mention of this development, and I'm happy to have Thrive be the developer because they are a good partner in our community, but I do struggle with the traffic. I think I've said it multiple times. I think my worry is not only we sit and think it's all going to come from 44th, but it's going to come from 41st, and it's going to come down that neighborhood street. And if anyone's been on that street, there's that little loop-de-loop that goes down. It's not a easy street to maneuver. It's, I mean, you've been there. So to have it kind of curve down, I mean, that's still a concern of mine. And although I appreciate not punching through to Happiness Gardens, I do, I sort of wonder that if we do put, right away through there, I think that would, and I'm not sure with the developer and those types of things, but I'm not okay with us. I think this is going to be an issue, and it might not be an issue for a traffic count in one direction, but I think it's really going to put a burden on the neighborhood to the south of it. And with that street that kind of drops down, it's just not easy. And as far as the light goes, there's already a light that's just west of 44th, or just west of Yarrow there, that the kids walk. I think it's a crosswalk. And I know we've talked about that as well. I know we've also talked about with Wadsworth and that changing, and how there's going to be that continuous flow lane, or, those types of things. But I think that this is going to be a problem. And I think it's for a couple reasons. One, it's, a very dense area in a not so dense neighborhood. And it also is a neighborhood where I live, and I know all the neighbors there. And I think that I just want to be mindful. We might sit and say, oh, the traffic count allows it and those types of things, but what impact is it going to have to, it's Zephyr Court, that's the one that goes down. You know, I think those are my concerns. So I know the developer will do what's right because they're really a good group, but I think from a city standpoint, we need to look at some aspects of this area because it's not easy to get to. You know, I'd like anybody to come and join me on 44th and Zephyr or Yarrow at 4:30, 5 o'clock at night. So again, I think, you know, we'll keep an eye on it, is in my opinion, not good enough. I mean, you know, the subdivision has already been improved. This is a minor change in the plat, but I think from a traffic perspective, I have some concerns.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify, and I think that Ms. Davis kind of said it in her closing, but not trying to downplay the potential traffic issues that are happening there, but this is the same number of units. It's just a change in format, whether they have a 3-plex or a 4-plex, and whether they have a 6 or a 5. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so if it's not approved, they'll just go back to their 3 and 6?
Likely.
Thank you.
Mr. Urban?
I don't know if Ms. Davis is aware of this or not, but this morning I think we almost ran into each other as I was dropping my kids off to school, and you were coming at that very point right there.
Yeah, the curve, the little
Right.
loop-de-doop,
You-
yeah.
You were coming down the curve, and I was going the opposite way, which I used to drop my kids off at school, and
Yeah.
it is somewhat of a challenge to come up and around that, hoping that someone isn't hugging the curve. So I would agree that that is somewhat of a concern, and I'd be open to any options that would involve mitigating that concern, especially for that neighborhood street, as they already deal with the school traffic there. So, but I will be voting in favor of this.
Ms. Dozman?
Thank you. I just have a question. If you could clarify whether the retaining wall is going to be maintained in the new proposed, because I just don't see it in the drawing.
Sure, the site plan drawings were not at that level of detail, but it's my understanding there's no other changes to the site design, just the unit reconfiguration.
Okay, thank you.
Before I close the public hearing and ask for a motion from council and discussion, are there any more questions of the applicant or staff? I'm going to close the public hearing, and a motion is in order.
Thank you. I move to approve resolution number 11-2019, a resolution approving an 89-lot subdivision plat for property zoned mixed-use neighborhood and planned residential development at the northwest corner of 42nd Avenue and Yarrow Street. Case number WS 18-07, Yarrow Gardens Townhomes, for the following reasons. City Council has conducted proper public hearing meetings, all public notice requirements as required by Section 26-109 and 26-407 of the Code of Laws. The requested subdivision has been reviewed by Planning Commission, which has forwarded its recommendations for approval. All requirements of the zoning code and subdivision regulations have been met, and utility districts can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. With the following condition, the developer shall pay park fees at the time of plat recording in the amount of $222,258.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take discussion on the motion. Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 4. Mr. Urban, would you please introduce item number 4?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 01-2019, an ordinance amending the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to regulate the creation of flag lots. At issue, Article 4 of Chapter 26 regulates the procedures for and the manner in which land can be subdivided. Those regulations allow flag lots, but they are not encouraged. Procedurally, subdivisions of 3 or fewer lots are permitted to be approved administratively without a public hearing. These two topics have been points of discussion at several city council meetings in late 2018. Based on council direction, the proposed ordinance, if approved, would not allow a subdivision containing a flag lot to be approved administratively, requiring at a minimum a planning commission public hearing.
This is a public hearing and an ordinance on second reading. Do we have an ordinance number?
This will be ordinance number 1665.
Thank you. And Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this one?
We have some brief comments from Ken Johnstone.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing, and I would like to open the public hearing now. Mr. Johnstone.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, no additional presentation beyond Councilmember Urban's introduction, but I just wanted to note that we distributed in your seats at the dais this evening a list, at Councilman Matthews' request, a list of all the subdivisions that have been processed through the administrative process in the last 2 years, in 2017, 2018, and we don't have any that have been yet submitted during 2019.
Thank you. Before we go to questions of council, I would like to I want to open the public hearing and invite the public to speak. I have a list of speakers. When I call your name, if you'd come to the podium and adjust the mic and give us your name and address and spell your last name. And we will start off with Mr. Chris Chidley and Mr. Walter Lamandola on deck.
My name is Chris Chidley. I live at 4020 Everett Street. The next person, Walter Lamandola, had to leave, so I will read some of what he left me, and also another resident who had to leave as well. I see no lights, so...
Will the clerk give you the lights?
So from Walter Lamandola, factors that define a number of the neighborhoods in Wheat Ridge include the neighborhood where I've resided for 29 years. Bellara cited in studies as important in neighborhoods that preserve and enhance their housing stock and prices while encouraging improvement and development. These factors include restricted traffic access, large lots, ample setbacks, view, walkable streetscape, and protection from smoke, noise, and pollution. Studies have pointed out that gentrification has been the most successful when it maximizes the potentials of a historic residential area while protecting their convivial human qualities, all of which play a role in the process of revitalizing neighborhoods. Such conviviality demands participation in the future decisions that affect a neighborhood, a manner that the administrative review does not. Our present process gives no security as to the future character of a neighborhood. We need a process where neighbors can participate in decisions that influence neighborhood growth and change. I am asking tonight that the council consider eliminating administrative subdivision provision and that they restore such that subdivision categories require public notice, neighborhood input, and considered in planning and council are key elements to the process. Another neighbor who left stated, flag lots are a way around R1 zoning, which are one-family dwellings, to essentially create duplexes which are not zoned in an R1. Public input and neighbors should be allowed to debate if a flag lot should or not be allowed in a neighborhood. The last comment is quite direct. 4477 Everett Street, approved flag lot. Community Development Director rushed the flag lot approval. In hindsight, could have been allowed by the public. My statement, I shall read what an R1 zoning is. The intent and purpose, this comes directly from the zoning. This district is established to provide a high quality, safe, quiet, and stable, and I underline low density residential neighborhood, and to prohibit activities of any nature which are compatible with the residential character. In 2014, subdivisions that were not minor, i.e. required public input, were changed from 2 to 3 lots. We request that any subdivision require public input in addition to flag lots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chidley. You had a comment that you read from Mr. Lamondola, and was there another citizen that you read a letter from?
That was Mike Cunningham. He's at 44 Field Drive. Mike Cunningham.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen Jenny and Molly Mayfield on deck.
Thanks. My name's Karen Jenny, Jenni. I live at 4070 Field Drive. I spoke, I think, in December when we were talking about the development at 4055, now 4077 Field Drive. And I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for moving forward in this way to try to get more neighborhood input into, at least into flag lots. I think it's a step in the right direction. I spoke and still strongly feel that it's important to have the neighbors involved in any of these decisions. That as people who don't intend to live in a house, buy a property and change its character, they have less invested in the community. It's important to allow the neighbors to have a say. So through this proposed change to make flag lots not be done by administrative subdivision, I appreciate that. I'd like to see you go further. I'd like to see no administrative subdivisions, but go ahead and allow public comment on all subdivisions. So instead of, well, in addition to this or in lieu of this, getting rid of the administrative subdivisions and go with the minor subdivisions for all such actions. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Molly Mayfield and George Mayfield on deck.
I'll pass on my chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. George Mayfield's our next speaker, and Catherine Grant would be following Mr. Mayfield.
Hi, George Mayfield, 4065 Field Drive in Wheat Ridge. Just want to support the proposal that's to get neighborhood input on the administrative flag lots. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Catherine Grant, and I have Carol Matthews on deck.
I'm also speaking on behalf of Elizabeth Grant, who was sick with the flu this evening. So we're both here to just support the public input for subdivisions and for flag lots, and or just not having flag lots in certain areas that have been, planned in a beautiful way that's an aesthetic neighborhood. We do not want high density housing in our neighborhood. We don't want the character of our neighborhood to change. Once that, somebody comes in and buys a house in that neighborhood, if then the quality of the neighborhood changes, that changes the value of the investment, that changes the value of their property. Not only that, but it's offensive to me personally that somebody would buy property in a beautiful neighborhood and just change it so drastically just for their own investment to create a rental for themselves or income for themselves at the expense of their neighbors and without the neighbors being able to give input. So we would just really like to go back to how it was 2014 and before, where there was public notice and public input for flag lots, and not having just one person make that decision who doesn't live in the neighborhood. So thank you. And this is also Elizabeth Grant.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carol Matthews.
Carol Matthews, 3851 Hoyt Street.
Tonight, I'm here to speak on the agenda item, flag lots, and to urge the City Council to amend this item to be the revocation of all administrative subdivision provisions per Article 4, Section 26-406 of Wheat Ridge Codes and Ordinances. The national news cites consumer confidence as the criteria for financial well-being and the growth of our national economy. Consumer confidence is the key to the revitalization of Wheat Ridge economy and the housing market. The Bel Air community reaction to the recent approval by the administrative subdivision process by a city administrator brought the light to the ramifications of the faulty procedure. The administration subdivision procedure truly discriminates against the citizens of established neighborhoods in Wheat Ridge by diminishing their rights for information and denying them the right to participate in the process of approval to divide a single lot or to approve flag lots in their subdivision. This property division can adversely affect the character, the amenities, and the property values in their neighborhood. When a single administrator can, behind closed doors, make the decision to alter the character of the entire neighborhood, it negates any incentive for the established residents to make investments in the property improvements. It villainizes the city administrator and creates the perception of corruption. The administration subdivision process truly discourages prospective buyers from investing in properties in any established neighborhoods in Wheat Ridge because it gives them no security as to the future character of the neighborhood and for their significant financial investment. Wheat Ridge needs a safe and transparent process to initiate neighborhood lot divisions that are uniform for all property owners. We need to encourage, not discourage, property improvements and investments in Wheat Ridge. Section 26401C of our Code of Ordinances states that the intent of these regulations is to prepare land for development and to recognize that arrangement of parcels, streets, and infrastructure has a definite impact on the character and environment of the city. Eliminate administrative subdivision provision. Restore it to minor subdivision category, which provides for public notice, neighborhood input, and review by the Planning Commission and the City Council. Preserve the character of our neighborhoods and eliminate the hostile environment that the administrative subdivision ordinance has created between the city administration and the property owners of Wheat Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes all of the people that I have signed up to speak on this matter. Is there anyone here who is not signed up who would like to speak? Please come to the podium and we'll go in the order that you arrive. Please give us your name and address and you may continue.
Good evening, Council. My name is Rachel Hulteen, 4690 Balsam Street. And I have been watching with close interest as this has evolved from sort of the state of emergency last fall, which feels like 20 years ago, as it has been thoughtfully reconsidered and has come to the point tonight. And I think what I've heard the speakers say tonight is that there's concern around opportunities for community input in important city discussions and decisions that are made. So my request tonight is that if you are considering anything other than just the approval of the flag lot issue, which is what has been shared and published and what the community was expecting to discuss tonight, that you table it and go through another transparent and well-developed public process so that everyone in the city who would be impacted by the decision to eliminate all administrative approvals has a chance to review and be here tonight to speak. I feel like we got here tonight in part because a very small number of people who have a lot of concern for their neighborhood brought this attention forward and council responded and has thoughtfully adjusted and has come to, I think, a great output from that original point. If we were to pivot at all, we'd actually be working against the idea of transparency and opportunity for citizen engagement. So if council does want to consider the petitions that they've heard tonight, to consider other eliminations of administrative review, that it is handled in the same process that we do any of those, and that it is put forward as a agenda item, and everyone in our city has an opportunity to come and be heard about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, please come and introduce yourself. And
hello, my name's Michael Pisney. I live at 9801 West 32nd Avenue, Wheat Ridge.
Raise the mic up just a little bit. So.
Sorry, did you get all that? You want me to repeat it?
No, you're good.
Pisney. I just want to really echo what I'm hearing here today and say that, you know, I'm in support of this, the review process and the public hearing component. Recently, there was a neighbor or someone that came in and purchased a property that was really run down. The whole neighborhood was really anxious to hear who was going to buy that property and what they were going to do with it. It was a large, almost acre property. And then really myself and several of the neighbors, you know, were soon very sad with what we've been told by those folks who are currently renovating that house, that they want to split the lot, and that they're planning on building in basically what would be the backyard, which is also directly in the view of about 4 or 5 of us, our mountain view. So when we saw that this was coming up and had heard that it had been a topic before, we were excited and pleased, and you know, I just really wanted to come today and say, you know, that we're in support of this as a neighborhood. And you know, the other component for us was that, you know, there was no, well, we're going to live in the first house or the second house. These were people that live in Bailey, Colorado, and they want to make $1 million on this, and that's really sad to hear and to see that that's the purpose behind it. And it's not about Wheat Ridge, it's not about the neighborhood, it's purely about making money in splitting the lot and building another house. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, come forward.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Scheeter. It's Schiter. I'm at 7595 West 48th Avenue. I just want to say a few words that I think that the city council of Wheat Ridge has a very important task ahead of them. We're right next to Denver. Things are exploding. People are moving in. Investment is coming in droves. Like the gentleman just said, there's people, outsider investment that aren't interested in the neighborhood. They're not interested in the territory. They're interested in making $1 million. And I understand it, and I'm all about property rights. At the same time, that goes both ways. People are invested in their neighborhood. It's their biggest investment they make in their lives in most cases. And the city of Wheat Ridge needs to be aware of that and needs to take that in consideration and have a transparent scenario, have someone beyond a single person who can make that decision. It needs to be shared. It needs to be, brought out in the open. I left Northwest Denver. I lived in Northwest Denver for, 12 years. And I left there for a reason. And I came to Wheat Ridge for a reason, because Wheat Ridge is special. And I really love this community, but it's going to be changing a lot. I just encourage you all to get a handle on it and to do what you can to ensure it's smart growth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ihor Figlus, Figlus, 9775 West 36th Avenue. I'd like to express my opposition to the proposed change in the ordinance. A strong opposition, because I feel it doesn't provide for any option to deny subdivisions of this type. Basically can create a free-for-all in our city. I think that the wording, when they are the most appropriate development option, should be retained in whatever new ordinance is drafted, and should be added that it, as determined by the Planning Commission and or the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not spoken on this item tonight who would like to come forward and speak on it? Okay, we will close our public comment on this and open this up to questions from council of staff. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question for staff is regarding Part C of the subdivision design section of Section 26-411, where it indicates the criteria in which a flag lot is permitted, although not necessarily encouraged. So if a flag lot were to meet the criteria listed A through C, would that then allow that flag lot subdivision to occur administratively, or are no flag lots permitted in the administrative process whatsoever?
The latter. No flag lots can be administratively approved if this ordinance is adopted as drafted.
Thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm kind of in between a rock and a hard spot here. I have been debating and arguing rigorously to completely remove and delete the administrative subdivision category and take all those 1 through 3 lots and put them back into the minor subdivision category where there's public comment and it goes through planning and it comes through city council. So I'm totally in favor of this motion, and I don't want to mess this up. It's a step forward, at least, towards, I think, what we've heard, and that people want to have a say in their environment. And I think Mr. Johnstone gets put in a very difficult position sometimes, but I, on the other hand, have to believe that staff asked for this change to be made back in 2012, whenever it was, 2014, that I don't think council just volunteered to say, okay, yeah, well, we can have these administrative subdivisions, and when they changed the code. I'm not sure why. And if Mr. Johnstone would like to address that, I'd like to hear the reason for it, other than just streamlining the process, which means taking it out of the public view. I would like to thank Mr. Johnstone and Mr. Goff for getting me a list of the subdivisions that have been done administratively in the last 2 years, and there are 11 of them. So, although we've been led to believe that it's a rare instance, administrative subdivisions are taking place every other month. And the people that live around them don't have any chance to say what's going on. Flag lots are particularly odious because it double stacks. And I would like to yield the floor for just a minute in case somebody else has some comments while I'd like to come back. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to make a new motion during this discussion. But I'd be happy to hear other people's comments right now while I...
Please don't make a motion until I end the public hearing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, I'll be quiet for right now and let some other people speak.
Appreciate it. Ms. Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with this ordinance, and I am in support of it and will vote yes. But I also would like to have a broader conversation about why that change was made, what it would look like if we were to have minor subdivisions go back to either planning commission or come to council. I don't want to throw this out entirely, and I feel like we do owe it to the community to have that discussion, have that transparency. So whether you and I choose to have that discussion at a study session and just kind of see where that conversation goes, I would definitely welcome that and support you in that. But as of tonight, I do want to vote on this issue, and I am voting yes.
Thank you. Additional, Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In talking with some of the members of boards and commissions, one of their largest complaints is their lack of ability to have any sort of decision-making capabilities or other abilities to affect change, and they felt somewhat hamstringed in their roles as a member of a board or commission. And I think that this particular resolution or this particular ordinance gives power back to the Planning Commission to actually make decisions within the process. And so as much as we're having trouble finding people to serve on various boards and commissions, I think this is one good step in making sure that we're making good use of our various boards and commissions to place this authority within the commission to allow these decisions to be made at the Planning Commission level. That being said, some of the reasoning behind this tangential issue of removing the administrative subdivision altogether was that the removal of these subdivision cases from our docket, if you will, would help us because we have an enormous load to deal with. But when we look at it, we don't have that very many administrative subdivisions to consider. And so when that time comes, and if that is to be study session, I would encourage us to consider the fact that the number of cases that were brought forward in 2017, 2018, and 2019 is but a handful when spread out throughout the year, and that is not an undue burden upon council to consider. So I would be in favor of discussing the removal of the administrative subdivision process as it relates to this hearing here today and the issue brought before us. I wouldn't want to muddy the waters, and I would like to see us plant this flag and take care of this issue and do away with the administrative subdivisions, administratively subdivided flag lots.
Thank you. Mr. Keeter.
So, Mr. Johnson, on the chart, I think we're all aware of one flag lot approval on this. Were any of the other approvals on this chart, did they involve flag lots?
I can't answer that definitively, but not to my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Davis.
So I support this as well because I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think the issue at hand was about the flag lots. I have mixed feelings about the changes, although I think, of the approval of all the subdivisions, the 2-lot subdivisions, 3-lot subdivisions, or consolidations, and I think it's because I know when we've talked in study sessions with Mr. Johnstone and his team, I think the worry is that it gets difficult because it gets, and I think it's important to be consistent, and I think that it's difficult with every situation because every situation is a little different, and I think a lot of it, when you get a lot of neighborhood feedback, then the council kind of moves towards that feedback and not the consistency of what they might look at from an administrative standpoint. And I'm going to just bring up something that we were seeing with some of this density and the thing that we saw just before, the Yarrow subdivision, very dense around a school and all of the above, which were all, and we approved it, but then we used those same factors to not approve several other ones. And I think a lot of it was because we had community in here voicing concerns and those types of things, although we had all the same factors. So I think it's tough because I think it's important to listen to the community. I think it's important to do those types of things, but I think as a lot of our community has said, oftentimes they're not able to attend, and so it doesn't mean that they don't care or have a voice, but I think what it does is it's kind of a catch-22 because it makes us start making inconsistent decisions and based off of many factors, and so I think I'm definitely open to it. I think it's important to preserve neighborhoods and communities, but I think that I'm just wondering how we can find a happy medium that that we're consistent as a council.
Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the point of consistency and factors relating to particular subdivisions and how those compare to one another, I would not want to compare individual applications to each other, and I think that is being consistent in that each case has to be brought on its own merits. Secondarily, as it relates to factors being considered within the consideration of one case over another, a adjacent property owner protest of a particular subdivision, in my mind, has a nature of being drastically more important than when no resident comes up to speak or has anything, doesn't have boo to say about a particular subdivision. And so in my mind, consistency is listening to the residents that are concerned and that have adjacent property interests and that want to make sure that whatever subdivision occurs is done in the best and transparent way. So in my mind, consistency is taking each case on its own merits and not allowing consistency to be considered as making the same decisions and the same votes on drastically different contexts and cases, because that, in my mind, is inconsistent, because we do not have the same neighbors to the same property being considered on each case. They are each unique and different, and that's where the consistency comes from, is understanding that each case has a different set of circumstances, and each property owner bringing that case for us deserves the consistency to consider the differences between their case and some other case that may or may not have been considered or approved.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Johnstone, can you please go over the process of Planning Commission public hearing, where it starts? Like, if, let's say, if this passes, then somebody comes in and they're requesting a flag lot, which, let me remind people, when you rezone one property into two properties, there's still two R1 properties, so there's still both R1. But can you go through the process of that for us, please?
Yeah, the Planning Commission public hearing notice would be provided to adjacent property owners. There is not a neighborhood meeting in the subdivision process, so the public outreach would really just be 15 days prior to the public hearing. The property would be posted. A notice would be published in the Wheat Ridge transcript, and adjacent property owners would be notified of the Planning Commission hearing.
Can you tell me how far adjacent property owner, like, what's the distance? Is it just the ones that touch it?
It's
or
just
is
adjacent.
It two
Yep.
properties out? Okay.
Yep.
And when it goes into a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, as I understand it, the Planning Commission's job is to, in one part, make sure that all of the criteria have been met, and then in the other part to then make their recommendations based on whether the criteria have been met or not. Is that correct?
Yes. So generally speaking, I think in previous conversations with City Council, we've had the conversation of, we consider subdivision in general to be a ministerial action. In other words, if they can check the box for minimum street width, minimum lot area, it's in some senses a perfunctory approval that you can't just kind of make up criteria for denial.
Do you feel like there is a potential of, if this becomes approved and flag lots have to go to Planning Commission for a public hearing, do you feel like there's a potential of an element of setup for the community, as though they feel like if they come to this hearing and they say, we don't like this, yet it meets all the criteria, and then the Planning Commission approves it, do you feel like there's a sort of a setup there for the community, for a misunderstanding perhaps?
Yeah, I've expressed that concern on some level in some of our previous discussions over the last several months. I think one of the reasons that you could make an argument for less of a public process with subdivisions and make an argument for administrative approvals, or even, minor subdivisions only go to the Planning Commission, not to City Council, is, you want to invite the public out, certainly, to be involved in almost all land use applications, but if you're going to invite them to a public hearing, you'd want them to have meaningful input. And I think setting the flag lot kind of issue aside, again, if it meets all the development standards for the given zoning district, which are really data oriented, then there isn't necessarily a great opportunity for meaningful input.
Thank you. I'll save my comments for discussion after the motion.
Mr. Keeter?
A follow-up on those questions. You talk about kind of checking the boxes. The current language, if if I'm understanding all this right, states that flag lots are not encouraged but can be approved if they meet these criteria. From, I guess, from your office standpoint, is that a hard standard to quantify? Do you find that hard to kind of administer? How do you check a box for something being not encouraged?
All right. Well, it's a good question, and I think it works. You know, we have proposed in this ordinance to take out some additional discretionary language. I'll just read it. It says, previously it said flag lots are not encouraged but are permitted when they are the most appropriate development option as determined by the community development director. We've taken out that are the most appropriate development, we proposed to at least, as determined by the community development director, because in my mind that gave me a lot of discretion without really defining what that discretion was supposed to mean. So we think it's a cleaner ordinance to say they're not encouraged, but are permitted when they meet the 3 criteria, and make it a little more cut and dry. That's been our proposal. I say it generally works, though, because I think, you know, if we were looking at a piece of, you know, a 50-acre piece of land, we don't have a lot of those, but I think we would take that and we would say, we probably don't want to see a flag lot in this subdivision, right? Because they're not encouraged. That said, you know, there are a lot of properties in Wheat Ridge that, whether the community likes it or not, and then certainly I understand people have opinions on flag lots, but they lend themselves to flag lots, and the reason for that is basic geometry. We have a lot of large parcels that are zoned, you know, R1 with a minimum 12,500 square foot lot size, and you know, you might have an acre property. So it's pretty easy to create a situation where you have a fairly traditional flag lot where you've got a front lot that, you know, might be 15, 20,000 square feet still, and you can carve off a back lot that's of equal size, because a lot of lots in Wheat Ridge are deep.
Additional, before I close the public hearing, does anyone on council have any more questions of staff on this matter? And I'm going to close the public hearing, and a motion is in order. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 01-2019, an ordinance amending the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to regulate flag lots on second reading, and that it take 15 days after final publication.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Ms. Hoppy.
I won't be voting for this. I don't think it's the appropriate way to address this. I think that the appropriate way to address this would be to change the criteria so that it changes the way anyone who applies for a flag lot has to apply. So not for it to go to a public hearing that could potentially send the wrong message, that the neighbors have the opportunity to change what's going to happen with the flag lot. It has to meet a minimum of criteria. We should change those criteria to what we want to see. So if you don't think that the pull portion of the abutting to the public street being 25 feet is wide enough, if you'd like to see that wider, then we should look at changing that. I also said this during the study session when this went to a consensus. I said that we are getting ready to move straight to an ordinance without it going through the proper study session. And so I feel like it's the absolute wrong way to do it. We have also asked to look at things like overlay zoning and things like that, which had also came out of that study session, which we will be doing. And we also looked at, and there was a request for a consensus to remove all subdivisions out of administrative review, out of administration, and into the Planning Commission and City Council, and that didn't pass. So I will be voting no on this. I feel like it's short-sighted and was done in short order, as everything that has happened with the whole emergency ordinance, the emergency moratorium from that night that it even started.
Mr. Keeter.
I agree with Ms. Hoppy, and I believe I will also be voting no on this. The sense, and I did watch the original marathon meeting when there was a lot of discussion about this. this has the feel of a citywide solution to a specific response to a specific property and a specific issue. And just as a general rule, I'm not sure that's actually the best way to make policy. And so I would be in favor of further discussion and further study to determine what sort of impact this actually would have, including the number of flag lots. I'm aware of one up in my district, and but only by walking past it, and I've never heard any outcry over it. And so I think I would also like to see more information as to what the actual impact of this would be before I could be in favor of it.
Thank you. Additional discussion? Mr. Matthews.
I just want to make sure these are working. Is anybody listening out there? Can they not hear the people say that they don't want things to happen behind closed doors? They don't want actions to be taken that affect their neighborhoods where they have not even have any notice. They don't want things to happen without any of their input. Hello, we already have nationwide, statewide, countywide, citywide people complaining because of the deep state, because of things that take on bureaucratically, and they feel hopeless and helpless. We've had people come up here and speak to us and say, well, nobody listens to the little people. We're the little people. The most important part of our job is to listen to people and then make the hard decisions. And when this code got changed into being administrative, we abdicated our basic responsibilities. And I also take issue with the fact that we have to handle each case the same. That's like saying everybody's guilty or everybody's innocent when it goes to court. You have the same law, but you have 12 people that go and listen and consider the facts. And in two different cases, they can come out with a guilty or an innocent verdict, depending on the individual case. And there's plenty of precedent for us to make arbitrary value decisions. We do zoning changes all the time. We just voted on a piece of property that met what the city called all the criteria by the numbers. But we all decided that that was not in the best interest of the neighborhood. And that's why we are here, is to take and look at each case individually and see, does it make sense in this case? If staff comes to us and says, well, there's 3 parking lots on site for 16 units, and we say that doesn't make sense, even if it meets the numbers. We didn't give them the zoning change. That's why even judges can sometimes put aside a verdict if they think something is wrong, even though it may have gone down by the numbers. That's our job. And maybe one neighborhood may not mind having a flag lot, another neighborhood might. And that's why you have to have some discretion. That's why we're here. The idea of us being here isn't to create ordinances to where we don't have to make tough decisions. We should be making more ordinances and taking back more of those tough decisions so the people's elected representatives are held to do their jobs. And at the very least, I'm going to not make a motion tonight to change this into all administrative subdivisions should be deleted. I will stay with the strict intent of this motion and deal strictly with flag lots. I don't want to muddy the waters, but I'm not going to go away. I've made that decision tonight. I will make a different motion in a minute. Other than the fact that we have to, in this motion, we have to remove, because this is going to planning commission, we have to remove some language that refers to the community developer. But I do not like the change in wording that they've put in there, and I think it should be worded differently. I think flag lots aren't encouraged but permitted when they are the most appropriate development option as determined by the Planning Commission and the City Council. We need to have options. We can't just lock ourselves out so we can hide behind the words of an ordinance and say, well, sorry, that's what the ordinance says, we got to go with it, even if 100% of the neighbors in the area don't like it. That's not why we're here. I just lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. I think that I'm going to move that the wording that's in this.
Are you requesting, are you
Yes.
making an amendment to the motion?
I'm making an amendment to the motion.
Okay, please proceed.
That the wording on, I don't have page 2 of this council action where it says flag lots are not encouraged, but are permitted when they shall meet the following criteria. And the portion there that's struck out, I think should be changed to say, but are permitted when they are the most appropriate development option as determined by the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Can I make a suggestion on the wording of the amendment?
Yeah, are we talking, let's not amend the notes, the staff notes on here. Can you make it in the form or where we are on the ordinance itself? Is that what you were suggesting?
In part, it's page 3 of the ordinance, the top of page 3 of the ordinance, I believe. Section 3 of the ordinance is what's amending Code Section 26411C7. I believe that's what Councilmember Matthews is intending to amend, and he's right. The present language that says are not encouraged, but maybe permitted when the most appropriate development option is determined by the, right now it says Community Development Director, and he's suggesting inserting the Planning Commission, City Council. And that's fine, except that minor subdivisions, which now these would be, are only reviewed by Planning Commission. Okay. So I would suggest that you not include City Council, because that means you would have to change all minor subs to now go to City Council, separate debate, but that's not the present structure. But if you wanted to retain the language about most appropriate development option, retain it, but substitute Planning Commission for Community Development Director, then I believe that accomplishes what you're trying to do.
I'll accept that, thank you. Okay, that's my motion, and I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Okay, would you please show me, Mr. Dahl or Mr. Matthews, where in the ordinance what we are amending?
Sure, it'd be Section 3 of the ordinance, which is the top of the third page of the ordinance. Okay. Would be, Section 3 would be changed to read, Section 26411C7 of the Regional Code of Laws is amended to require the creation of flag lots, is amended, to state flag lots are encouraged but are not encouraged but are permitted when they are the most appropriate development option as determined by the Planning Commission. Then it would go on, use of a flag lot design shall meet the following criteria, and of course those are already there.
So we would strike the words require review of the creation of flag lots by the Planning Commission at a public hearing? Is that language struck from the amendment?
No, it would still be there, but where it says C7, the bold language, flag lots are not encouraged but are permitted, when that bold language there, what Councilmember Matthews is suggesting is after the bold language, before they meet all of the following criteria, you insert the words.
Right below where it says subdivision design, section 26-411.
Exactly, yeah. So you would add words to what's right now. You see in bold and underlined, flag lots are not encouraged but are permitted in C7. Right after permitted when they, insert the words, are the most appropriate development option as determined by the Planning Commission, and meet all. And that would be how he would be suggesting that sentence be changed.
Effectively, it's retaining the current section about appropriate development option, but making that decision about appropriateness the Planning Commission, not the Community Development Director.
And is the word "are" changed to the word "may"? In "are permitted" or "may be permitted"?
I think "are" remains when they are the most appropriate development option as determined by the Planning Commission, and then you would say use of a flag lot design shall meet the following criteria, which is language already there.
Mr. Mayor, clarification, please.
Ms. Hoppe.
Mr. Matthews, I believe that one of the things that you didn't like was the words permitted when they're the most appropriate development, and now you're reinserting those into the language of the ordinance?
Now I'm getting lost again. I had this marked up at one time, and now we've changed it, so give me a second if you would. We are on, let's make sure we're on the same page that says signed by Bud Starker, Mayor, at the bottom.
Yes, it's that page. You're right, top of there, or the top of that page.
Section 3.
Yep.
Okay, flag lots are not encouraged but are permitted when they is in bold.
Yes.
Okay, meet all of the following criteria.
Correct. And if you want to insert Planning Commission in terms of appropriate development option flexibility, then that's where you would add it.
Isn't it already under Section 3, flag lots by the Planning Commission at a public hearing as follows, Section 26-411, subdivision designs, C, lots, 7. Flag lots are not encouraged but are permitted when they meet all of the following criteria. Doesn't that already say what you were wanting to say?
Well, I got hung up here in the notes when staff crossed some of this stuff out, and then that's where I started getting hung up in the first place, because the whole idea of this is not to just have color by the numbers type of deal, but to have actual people making the decision.
Clarification for Mr. Dahl. On the previous page, on section B under 26405, flag lot is now a minor plat, and so isn't the language already there require the review and approval of the Planning Commission, so that Mr. Matthews' goal is already accomplished by what's already in the original proposal?
That's correct. Moving flag lots from an admin subdivision to a minor subdivision automatically means that the decision maker is the Planning Commission. What's left is, and maybe we don't even now need the discussion, but the sort of additional flexibility language in addition to this list of 3 criteria. Do you want the Planning Commission to be thinking about whether it's the most appropriate development option, a kind of a subjective test?
Before it ever gets here.
Well, before, as a part of their decision on it. It won't ever get to council because it's a minor sub. But as the ordinance is written, flag lots won't be administratively reviewed or approved, and instead they'll be decided upon by the Planning Commission, so you're correct. So I don't know if the motion or the amendment's still necessary. It's up to you.
Yeah. That'll be fine.
What would you like to do with the amendment?
I meet all of the following criteria as Okay.
If it's a major subdivision of 5 lots or something, and there's that many flag lots in a major subdivision, then of course council's going to see a major subdivision anyhow, but that's really not subject to tonight's.
Is your question that that the ordinance is drafted, do you feel there's a question that requires this hearing to be before the
yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry, I'll withdraw my motion for right now.
Thank you. Ms. Dozman.
If Ms. Dozman would withdraw the second.
Yes, I withdraw. So it's confusing because we're going back and forth from the original language to the new language, and so it didn't quite fit. So yeah, thank you.
Ms. Hoppe.
Thank you. I am concerned that every time somebody who owns a property wants to do something different with their property should have to come to city council. I think that's a little bit of an overreach for private property. And again, if it's going to the public, to a public hearing with planning commission, and their job is to make sure that it's fulfilling all the requirements, and you don't like the requirements, then we should be changing the criteria, not making different funny ordinances. We should be changing the criteria. If you want them to judge it on different criteria, we should be changing the criteria. So again, I think this is a muddy ordinance, and I still won't be voting for it.
Pardon me, Mr. Matthews?
Thank you. I have to ask, generally when we have things go to Planning Commission before they come here, we have a written record of the Planning Commission's decision, and they did approve this as I believe. Why is it not included in this record?
They approved the ordinance. Planning Commission recommendation on the ordinance.
The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval. I apologize that that was not attached to the
minutes
packet.
are here. Attachment 3 are the minutes. No, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. They weren't attached, Ken?
But
So for the record, the Planning Commission did unanimously approve of this ordinance.
Correct.
Or the intent of it.
Is there further, so we have a motion and a second, and we are discussing the motion. There's no amendment. Is there further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Urban.
Well, I can't speak for the Planning Commission. I can only go back to what I said earlier about our boards and commissions seeking more purview and authority over issues which come before them, in which they have some discernment and ability to make decisions. And I think this is one way in which we're giving the Planning Commission an ability to provide oversight and discernment with respect to the planning of our city. And so that's one of the reasons why I'll be voting in favor of this.
Additional discussion on the motion. Mr. Keeter.
Just briefly, and I support Mr. Urban's intent there, but we need to remember that every step in the process costs the applicant time and money, and that the people of the city are not here to keep government busy. And so notice that over half of the administrative approvals were in Division 1 or District 1, and my phone number's only been available to the public for about a week, but I'm unaware of administrative subdivisions or even flag lots being a problem in the district, which is why I have an issue with a one-size-fits-all application. And to the extent that, especially in the broader sense, administrative approvals have been a way for property owners in my district to economically move forward with their plans for property. I'm not comfortable with taking that away just because there may be some issues in other places.
Additional discussion on the motion. Looks like we're ready to vote. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Dahl, this requires 5 votes, right?
5 votes. Charter 5.9 requires a majority of the entire council, so that's 5 votes.
Okay. Motion fails 4-2 with council members Hobby and Keeter voting no.
Okay. That concludes the business portion of our program, our meeting. We will move now to city managers' matters. Mr. Goff.
I don't have anything this evening, thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney's matters, Mr. Dahl.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, we will move to elected officials matters, and I will start with our clerk.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Elected officials matters, Mr. Keeter.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews.
Yes, I just need to find it. I got my papers all messed up here. One of the things I wanted to let everybody know is that tomorrow, on the 12th, I believe it is, the CDOT is having a meeting at the rec center.
Yeah, excuse me, on the I-70 and Kipling interchange, environmental assessment, it's from 5 to 7 at the Recreation Center. It's an open house to get final comments and public input.
Thank you. I also had wanted to alert everyone to the fact about the upcoming discussion on safe injection centers. That's happened already. I would also like to tell the people that we're known as Tree City, and the city Parks and Recreation Department of our city is starting a new street tree planting program. People will be getting letters inviting property owners to participate. Those letters will be mailed in February. And after receiving the letter, the Forestry Department from Parks and Rec will help you choose locations and species. And there's dedicated areas in the city where they're going to be concentrating this effort. And then the plantings will occur in June of this year. So I encourage everyone to be looking for those letters and to take advantage of an effort that could be beautifying our city across the whole spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dozeman.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis.
Can I, nothing tonight, but I have a clarification on Mr. Matthews' update. Patrick, were there select areas already selected? I guess I want to clarify that because I read it that there were already areas selected and people were going to get the notice, not everybody get the notice.
Correct, at least for this first go around. This is a trial program, and we've identified certain areas where trees may have died. These are in right-of-way areas. And so, yeah, we're identifying specific areas for this first period, and if it's successful, we'll keep doing it throughout the city.
All right, thank you. I just didn't want everyone to say, where's my letter?
Thank you. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things. First of all, with respect to safe injection sites, I myself am not in favor of the concept of a safe injection site in the city of Wheat Ridge. However, if by chance our discussion of safe injection sites brings forward a greater awareness around the issue of the opioid crisis, and it is a crisis within our city and within our state, that is my intent in having that discussion, because without a discussion around safe injection sites, it doesn't seem to raise the ire or the attention of folks enough to get them to realize that this is a painful crisis, and this is something that needs to be addressed, and there are multiple ways in which this can be addressed. And as a member of the Colorado Consortium for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention, there are many ways, and our local law enforcement, including the Wheat Ridge Police Department, has participated in the drug take-back program, in which prescription drugs are dropped off at DA-approved take-back locations, as well as specific pharmacies, including the Lutheran pharmacy that allows for the safe disposal of prescription drugs. These are methods and ways in which we can curtail the abuse of prescription drugs, to the end of also including the issue of opioid addiction and the genesis of 90% or greater of heroin abuse in our country is from the legal prescription of opioids by a licensed medical professional. And until we wrap our heads around that and understand that heroin junkies in our community didn't set out to become heroin junkies. They set out to alleviate pain, and that pain was alleviated by the prescription given to them by a licensed medical professional. And that's what I think our community needs to discuss and understand. And any effort that we can take to alleviate that stain and that pain in our community, I think it is worth our time and our discussion. So while I'm not in favor of any sort of legalized or injection site of any kind, I think that it's worthy of our discussion to make sure that those who are in pain or having that struggle, that they understand that we're concerned about that issue, as well as the larger concern with our first responders and their exposure to fentanyl and other concerns sort of ancillary to that. Setting that aside, speaking directly about the 48th Avenue cul-de-sac and the concerns of the neighbors, and stemming from the meeting that occurred on January 30th, Mayor Bud Starker and myself met with city staff, and we are presently working on understanding how we can allow both CDOT and the Federal Highway Administration to participate in a public meeting and allow for more discussion regarding that particular proposal, and what, if any, alternatives or solutions can be derived to come to some agreement regarding that particular linchpin in the Wadsworth widening process, and we hope to have an update here shortly.
Thank you, Ms. Hoppy.
I have a procedural question for Mr. Dahm. Is there a specific reason why we take citizens' right to speak before the approval of agenda?
No, it's in your council rules. You have an order of procedure in council rules, but it's completely up to you when you choose to take it.
So for these reasons, there have been times where we've changed the agenda after citizens' right to speak, and therefore those people who could have signed up during citizens' right to speak don't get an opportunity to speak. I feel that we should consider changing it to approving our agenda and then going into citizens' right to speak. One big one that I can think of was when Clear Creek Crossing was going to sell their property, and we had both rooms open with people, and we were postponing that one. We did take public comment that night to then be added later into the hearing. However, it gets messy when we do things like that. And also tonight we had two things on our agenda that were being continued, and so those folks could have been able to speak during citizens' right to speak if we would have said these are being continued off of our agenda, but when we approved the agenda ahead of time, and then we wouldn't have had all of that mess. There have been, I can't remember off the top of my head, but two other times that I can think of when we've kind of come to that situation. So I would ask that, and I won't ask for consensus tonight, I'll let everybody think through that process, but I will on our next meeting, which will not be next week, but the following, it's President's Day next Monday, I'll be asking for a consensus at the end of that meeting for us to consider changing the way our order of business to moving approval of agenda before citizens' right to speak. On top, then find out more information about what farmers will be there. There's a few.
My fellow councilors have received a letter from Tim Fitzgerald, a councilor from District 3, who resigns his post effective February 10th due to ill health. And I would like to see if I could get a motion to accept Mr. Fitzgerald's resignation and sincere thanks.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Please.
I would say that Councilmember Fitzgerald's attendance and work ethic when it came to City Council was unmatched, and while he and I did not agree on many items, I can agree that his, as you mentioned, yeoman's work on council is to be respected and admired, and his willingness to attend the meetings even despite his ill health is something for us all to strive for, because it is something that it just shows the dedication and the importance this work had to him. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Fitzgerald for his service in our community. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Miller on his selection as the new city treasurer for an interim period. I'd also like to thank Mr. Stites for applying for the position. I think he did a great job with his application, and his questioning through the council was admirable, and I look forward to him being a part of our continuing community involvement. I'd like to thank the love notes that were put forth for our first responders. I know that whenever I've needed a first responder and they've been there, love is what I'm thinking about. And I would like to thank the students from Mountain Phoenix who came in and are dedicated to acts of kindness. What? Compass Montessori. I'm sorry. You know, I get confused. It's great to think about. I hope we'll all go and think about that and see how we might be kinder and gentler in our daily lives to all of us. Because Valentine's Day is coming up, and I hope that we have lots of Valentines in our city, because we've got a great city with lots of love. With that, there being no further business, we will adjourn. Thank you.